little is actually known about the Etruscan people, one thing that I can tell by what they left behind is that they were believers. They had hope for a life after death. While we don't know for sure what they imagined that this life would look like, the objects that they were buried with, such as mirrors, hairpins, and vases, suggest that the afterlife would somewhat reflect their life on Earth. The implication of all of this is that life does not end after death. Maybe it changes, but it doesn't end. However, when you walk through the halls of the National Etruscan Museum, which houses many of the artifacts that were buried in Etruscan tombs, you're met with the overwhelming sense that the artifacts and objects you're looking at belong to a people and a culture that is long gone, certainly not one that continued living. This creates an interesting paradox: a life continued and a life frozen in time. While the Etruscans were hopeful that their souls would go on to live another life after death, the cold glass that encases almost everything in the museum cements the objects with no hope of a continued use in the afterlife. As I walked through the museum, I was overwhelmed by the juxtaposition of continuation, symbolized by everyday objects, and stagnation, represented by the glass that encloses almost all of them. Seeing all these objects trapped in glass boxes was saddening to me at first. It was as if the hope that the Etruscans bestowed in these objects was taken from them when they were placed in the museum. To me, it seemed almost disrespectful to the Etruscans' wishes to have these objects, which were supposed to be used for the afterlife, stuck in the confines of a museum. But then I began to think, maybe even behind glass, these objects were living. While they aren't being used the way we assumed the Etruscans believed they would have been, in a way, the objects live on by acting as memories of a past people. That maybe there is a chance that people today can know a little bit about who the Etruscans were because of these objects. The objects continue to tell a story of the Etruscans, and even though they are not using them in the afterlife, through these objects, the Etruscans are eternal. It made me think of a line from one of my favorite Bruce Springsteen songs. In his song Atlantic City, Springsteen submits, "Everything dies, baby, that's a fact. But maybe everything that dies someday comes back." I've always taken this line to mean that yes, things end, people die, but nothing is actually ever gone for good. It just comes back in a different way. So maybe that's a good way to think of museums, as a place where people and things that are no longer with us can come back and live on. Maybe the museums are the afterlife.